Good afternoon. I just have to start out by saying, being from Metropolitan Water District and being up here, it always feels a little bit like we're working behind enemy lines. I hope, I hope you don't feel that way. I've been with Metropolitan for quite a few years. The last 7 or 8 years or so, working in the conservation team, and I wanted to talk about some of the things that we are doing to improve our water use efficiency down in the Southern California area, and then try and kind of relate that to why you are all here today. If I could just ask, how many people are familiar with the Metropolitan Water District? Okay. Well, you're kind of the outlier then. It always seems that when I'm talking outside of our service area, more people know about us than when I'm talking inside of the service area. But we are a rather large special district. We serve approximately 19 million people over a fairly large area, 5,200 square miles, growing. If the stats that I looked up last night are correct, that's 170,000 people. That's about twice, or maybe a little more than twice, the size of the city of Napa every year. Obviously, a large economy. On average, we provide about 50% of the potable water supplies or demand for that region. A little close-up of the area. We are actually a consortium, a water wholesaler, but we're made of what we refer to as member agencies. And that could be cities such as the city of Los Angeles or Pasadena, or other water wholesalers such as the San Diego County Water Authority. They in turn have their own member agencies that may be water retailers or wholesalers as well. I'm going to fly through some of the different slides fairly quickly, but I will camp on some that I think are a little bit more relevant. I probably don't need to spend too much time on this, but our reason for being is essentially this. The last few years notwithstanding, generally wetter up in the northern part of the state and drier in the southern part of the state. And so we were actually created to build the Colorado River Aqueduct. So we own and operate the Colorado River Aqueduct. We import water from the Colorado River to our service area. On the average, maybe about 20-25% of our supplies annually. We are also a state water project contractor. We generally get about 25 or 30% of our water supplies from Northern California, like Oroville. Comes down through the California Aqueduct. And then also, the rest is generally made up of what we refer to as local supplies. That would be local surface water, groundwater. And in the case of the city of LA, we refer to it as a local supply, but they also import water from the Owens Valley. In fact, we are often confused with the city of LA for their LA Aqueduct. And the interesting story behind that, but that's another talk. Just a quick overview of some of the facilities that we use or rely on. Diamond Valley Lake, our reservoir down in the Hemet area, a major component of our storage capacity. Lake Perris is part of the State Water Project. Castaic also, San Luis Reservoir, some of you may be familiar with that, and Lake Mead on the Colorado River system. We have been able to, in recent years, develop quite a bit of surface water storage, and that has really helped us tremendously over the last few years. I'll give you a little bit more information about that as we go along. Again, a series of a few slides. This is not really news, but to emphasize the point, we've had several years of dry and increasingly dry weather. We are really in a very unprecedented time right now with respect to water supplies, at least Southern California is. I should say, actually the whole state is. Southern California has, being dependent on the imported water supplies, maybe a little bit different situation than up here. On top of all that, below average runoff between 2012 and 2013, some of the driest years on record, low snowpack, and really high temperatures. And for those of you who are familiar with the State Water Project, for the very first time, they had a 5% allocation, which is essentially they're going to deliver about 5% of the capacity of the system this past year. That really put some interesting stresses on our ability to provide water to our member agencies. We, in fact, had to really kind of rework some of our systems so that we could bring more of the Colorado River water over to the parts of our service area that really almost 100% relied on State Water Project water. So for us, not just from a supply standpoint, but infrastructure became really important as well. And the classic comparison pictures, Lake Oroville a few years ago, and Lake Oroville several months ago. I believe it's still only at about 39 or 40% capacity right now, so it probably doesn't look too much different from this. Another couple of slides that I really like. California from a satellite image a couple of years ago and last year. And I actually wasn't able to put it in the presentation, but I saw an image from just a few weeks ago, a couple of days ago, and the current snowpack doesn't look too different from this. Maybe a little bit more snow in the Klamath or the Cascade Mountains and the Coast Ranges there, but again, very low snowpack year. So, back in January, the governor declared a drought, January 2014. A few months later, issued the executive order. Metropolitan basically said, we are going to step up. We're going to do whatever we can to help the state address the water supply issues. We declared a regional water supply alert, hoping to reduce our demands by about 20%. Our conservation budget was doubled to $40 million. In previous years, we basically had a budget of $20 million each year, and we really struggled to actually use that. We would typically use maybe 11 or $12 million, and this is primarily for incentives. Our board decided that we really needed to step up and try and do a lot more. Our executive management came to us and said, you guys got to do a lot more. And on top of that, our external affairs put together a $5.5 million media campaign where they really went out through radio, TV, social media, and all kinds of things to really get the word out that Southern California needs to respond and reduce their water use. So that kind of looked like this. We had a series of radio and television spots. We helped our member agencies with a number of different ways to get the word out, promote water conservation. There was the State Water Resources Control Board regulations came out, so we definitely got on board with that and really tried to get that messaging out as well, things that you don't want to do in this time. So we have a number of ways that we address water supply issues. We have our rebate programs. We give rebates for water-saving devices. We have educational programs. We try to help our member agencies and retailers promote local ordinances. We do outreach and marketing. What I want to kind of camp on a little bit more today is new technologies. We're trying to find different ways, better ways to continue and go after, say, the higher hanging fruit. We've been doing toilet rebates and washing machine rebates for upwards of 20 years now. We haven't really reached saturation on those yet, but we've got other things that we can go after to try and reduce overall water use. So one of those things is our innovative conservation program. We call it the ICP. We began this about 13, 14 years ago. And the idea was, we don't know all the different potential techniques or devices or technologies out there. We need to become aware of those. We have essentially a staff of about 8 people working on water use efficiency for that whole service area that I showed you earlier. We don't have a lot of time to go out and do our own testing. We don't really have the resources to do that. So we look to other folks to do that. And what we'd like to do is to be able to enable them to do that. So it is open to a whole range of entities or individuals. And it is essentially a grant program. We will provide some seed money to do some testing or experimentation to see what kinds of ideas are out there. This last round was in 2013. We wanted to focus primarily on landscape and commercial technologies. An interesting thing on this round, we also had the Bureau of Reclamation partnering with us, as well as Southern Nevada Water Authority and the Central Arizona Project. This is the first time that we've actually worked with those entities, so the program is expanding. We had over $500,000 available for different grants. So we had a panel that reviewed about 50 proposals. We selected 13 for funding, and the different areas that were represented included pressure regulation, large commercial or conveyor dishwashers, soil amendments, commercial audits, and plant sensors. So if any of you were wondering, what is Metropolitan doing up here? We actually are providing some grant funding for Fruition Sciences to further evaluate their plant sensing technology. We like what we see so far. We're waiting to get a little bit more information on that. The great thing about that, for us anyway, it's innovative. It's something that we could never have come up with internally. And it has applicability not just here, but throughout our service area. We don't have tons of agriculture, but we do have enough down in the northern San Diego County area and western Riverside, around Temecula and Fallbrook and those areas. So if the information and the data from this is something that we think is really useful, we'd like to promote it, make it available to other entities in our service area so that they can take advantage of that. I'll probably just flip through these fairly quickly. Our rebate program, standard rebate program, there are similar ones up here in Northern California, Napa as well, both residential and commercial rebates. We've been trying to focus on the outdoors more recently. And the interesting one this year, we just started our turf removal program, Cash for Grass program. We are currently offering, as a drought response, $2 per square foot. And to date, we've received over $120 million in funding requests for turf removal. So one of the things that we talk about is kind of moving the market or influencing behavior, and that's one of the things we're kind of hoping to do with that. We have survey programs, classes. The last one I want to spend a couple of minutes on, this is the program that I'm currently managing, the Water Savings Incentive Program. It's essentially a pay-for-performance program. This is also a custom kind of a program, so that if you have something that doesn't fit into our other programs, as long as we can see that water is saved, we might be able to put you through this program, provide some incentives for whatever system you're putting in place, whether it's a on-site recycling or some kind of a new agricultural technology or process or whatever. Really quickly, we do incentivize recycled water use. We have incentives to hook up to existing systems. We also do incentivize our member agencies' production of recycled water. This map here is all the projects that we have so far provided funding for. Just a few months ago, we also enhanced our incentive rate for that. We used to provide up to $250 an acre foot. Now we will be providing as much as $475 an acre foot. So we're really serious about trying to get more recycled water production going down in Southern California. And then just a snapshot of where we are right now. I mentioned that it was hard for us to spend $20 million in previous years. We've pretty much blown that out of the water already, and we're not even through the fiscal year. But the results, whoops. We do believe that we're being effective. During the last drought, you can see that we've reduced our water use about 17%. We think in large part that is due to conservation efforts. And I'll just really quickly, briefly mention this. I told you about storage before. Storage is really key for us. And we've had the largest pull on storage this past year. At least it's been there for us to do that, but not the kind of thing that we can sustainably do year after year. We need to have some wet years to put the water back in. So this is really where I wanted to get to. In the past, we've relied a lot on the imported water supplies, Colorado River Aqueduct State Water Project, over half of our supplies in an average year. Then the balance was made up of local supplies, storage, water storage, and transfers where we will actually purchase water from other water suppliers. You can see currently, and what we envision in the future is that has really shifted to where we will be looking at conservation and local supplies to make up the majority of our water supplies, and then fill that in with the imported water. So it's really a very different paradigm than where we were before. And that's it.
Thank you, Gary. Room for questions? Yes?
Hi. I don't know how much of the residential water users is in your district, how much important they are. I live in a small town here, St. Helena, and the best incentive program that they set up in the city was to increase the price of water. I stopped irrigating my yard. You haven't talked about that. How much the water cost in your district?
Well, again, our service area covers quite a few districts. There's a pretty broad range because of all the different factors that go into pricing the water. It can be as low as $2 or $3 per unit to, if you get into the higher tiers, a lot of them have tiered rates, $12, $13, $15. So on the residential side, you bring up a very interesting point. If you increase the price significantly, you'll have significant cutbacks. We know that. But there's obviously a balance there. We're in the business of selling water. In fact, a lot of people wonder why we have a conservation program, where we're incentivizing people not to use our product. Reliability is important for us. And when it comes to the actual water use, we don't want to force someone to into a, how do I put it, sort of a situation that they don't want to be in. We don't want to tell people when and how to use water. We want to be able to provide it when they need it. But we also want to see it used correctly.
Thank you.